Good evening, everyone. My name is Councillor Andrew Davenport, Mayor of Whitehorse, and I welcome you all to tonight's council meeting. I remind councillors that the meeting, other than the confidential meeting which is being recorded, and the audio recording will be made publicly available on our council website tomorrow. Our purpose is to provide greater access to council debate and decision making and encouraging openness and transparency. However, Council accepts no liability for any individual opinions or statements. Councillors and officers, please ensure that microphones are on when speaking. I formally open this council meeting and ask that you all stand for the opening prayer and statement. We give thanks, O God, for the men and women of the past whose generous devotion to the common good has been the making of our city. Grant that our own generation may build worthily on the foundations they have laid. Direct our minds that all we plan and determine is for the well-being of the city. Amen. In a spirit of reconciliation, Whitehorse City Council acknowledges all Wurundjeri people as the traditional custodians of the land we are meeting on. We pay our respects to their elders past and present. Please be seated. And the members of the gallery, welcome to take a seat. There should be one available. Thank you. I would now like to introduce our councillors and senior officers here this evening. Councillors on my left, Councillor Raylene Carr.
Good evening, everyone. It's fabulous to see all the red. Well done.
Councillor Bill Bennett.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome.
Councillor Blair Barker.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome, and particularly to Lockie Bacon, my son's football coach. Welcome, Lockie.
Councillor Tina Liu.
To see you red tonight. Welcome.
Councillor Sharon Ellis.
Good evening, everyone from Moreton Park.
Councillors on my right, Councillor Prue Cutts.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to you all.
Councillor Ben Stennett.
Good evening and welcome.
Councillor Denise Massoud.
Good evening and welcome. It's great to see the community spirit.
Councillor Andrew Munro.
Good evening all, and I think Craig Smith might have done coaching of at Auskick for my son, so welcome to all the Blackburn people here.
Staff on my left, Acting Chief Executive Officer Ms Terry Wilkinson.
Good evening.
General Manager Infrastructure Mr Philip Warner.
Good evening.
Acting General Manager Corporate Services Mr Mark Ackland.
Good evening, everyone.
Staff on my right, Executive Manager Governance and Customer Service Mr Tony DeFazio.
Good evening all.
Team Leader Governance Ms Jenny Russell.
Good evening.
General Manager City Development Mr Jeff Green.
Good evening.
And in the gallery, Manager Communications Ms Sally Freud. And also in the gallery, Community Development Manager Ms Debbie Snedden. So apologies for this evening, and I do note Councillor Carr has an apology seeking a leave of absence for the 20th of August. Can I have a motion to accept Councillor Carr's leave of absence for the 20th of August?
Happy to move, Mayor. Happy to second.
Councillor Cutts moved, seconded Councillor Massoud. I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Councillors and officers. The next item on the agenda is disclosures of conflicts of interest. Councillors and officers, are there any disclosures of conflicts of interest in regards to the matters to be considered on tonight's agenda? If so, I will require a disclosure of that interest and nature of that interest.
Yes, Mayor. I have conflict of interest.
Can you describe which agenda item and then the nature of the interest, please?
That's item 9.1.1, and the nature of the interest is that I have got an interest in a residential property on that street.
Thank you. Are there any other conflicts of interest?
Yes, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Ellis.
In the community grants, Al Kyra, I am a member of their foundation board.
And Al Kyra, that's other community grants 921. Okay, other conflicts of interest?
Yes, Mayor. Likewise with me, 9.1
1.21, community grants, and I do have a conflict in that I do hold honorary positions in the Asian Business Association of Whitehorse as well as the Taiwanese Business Association of Melbourne. Thank you.
Councillors, are there any further conflicts of interest? There being none, Councillor Stennett, Councillor Ellis and Councillor Wu, at the appropriate time when the agenda items are called, I'll ask that you vacate the chamber for those particular items. Thank you. We'll now move on to item number 4, confirmation of minutes from previous meetings. Councillors, we have listed on the agenda the minutes from our last meeting requiring confirmation by council. Can I have a motion to confirm the minutes of the ordinary and confidential council meeting held on 25th of June 2018?
So moved.
Councillor
Seconded.
Bennett had moved, seconded.
Seconded.
Councillor Ellis. I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Item number 5, responses to questions. Council provides the opportunity for anyone present in the gallery to submit a question in writing on the forms provided, for which we will endeavour to provide a response. I will ask the Acting Chief Executive Officer whether there are any questions submitted.
Yes, Mayor, there is 2 questions. There are 2 questions.
Can you please read the questions and then provide a response, please?
Thank you, Mayor. Mr Paul Molan is in the... There you are. Sorry, I missed you in the red. From Blackburn. Thank you very much for your question. First question is, can the $41.6 million contained in the Public Open Space Reserve, shown in the budget for 2018-19 and estimated to increase to $64.1 million in 2021-22, be used to fund any increase in the cost of provision of a 2-storey pavilion at Moreton Park? The second question is, as Council's public open space strategy shows a shortfall in open space in the central Blackburn area as a result of the number of apartments being built around the station and recommends provision of a small local open space, shouldn't Council be doing all it can to preserve existing open space in the area? Mayor, given that we have a motion on the agenda to be debated tonight, it will be up to council as to which option they choose and how that will be funded. So we will take this on notice and respond in writing to you. Thank you, Mr Moreland. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. I'll now move on to item number 6, notices of motion. Item 6.1, notice of motion 111. Councillor Masood. I seek a mover.
Happy to move, Mayor.
I seek a seconder.
Happy to second.
Councillor Munro. Councillor Masood.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a different debate this month, councillors. The budget has been passed, but we have a project in there for a pavilion at Moreton Park, which we need to consider in terms of its standards and what it is delivering. This motion is about 2 main issues. Firstly, the open space impacts of a split level option. To address that initially, with the split level, there'll be a loss of about 450 square metres approximately of open space that is actually usable with grass, where people actually could sit on it and use it. Now, in Blackburn, if we want to replace that, it would be valued well over $1 million, and if you can't buy a piece that size, let's face it, if you're buying a block of land, it would be $2 million worth. So how are we replacing that loss of open space? And of course, the community have already lost a significant amount of amenity along the railway line. So we need to consider we are trying, and it's certainly in our policies, to maintain our open space and expand it, not reduce it. The other point is about functionality and the siting of the building. The split level option will extend to get the footprint needed to provide the functionality needed for 2 ovals. It actually extends and curves around at the northern end of the upper oval. That is problematic. There are conflicts due to that. What are they? Well, firstly, what we call a grandstand, but it's some concrete benches, I think, usually for for spectators to sit on, is going to go behind the goalposts. So that could be an inherent risk. And even if we put screens up, okay, then you won't risk the footballs going into their laps. But what about the cricketers? Because the cricket pitch has to be aligned north-south. That is in the guidelines from Cricket Australia. And what does that mean? Okay, then they also state quite clearly that you should not have spectator movement when it's in the sight line of the bowler and the batter. Now, the batter's trying to receive a fast ball and they're seeing a group of mixed colours, etc., and movement when they're trying to see a ball. So I have had it confirmed that it would require a sight screen. Whoops, what does that mean? We're going to build a stadium or a grandstand where the spectators are going to sit, and what's going to go up? A sight screen, so they won't even be able to see the cricket match from there. It'll be obscured by the sight screen. That is not good design. Are we going to pay for a building that does not deliver the essential functionality? There are guidelines here. As I said, Cricket Australia have guidelines. It talks about specific things in terms of the position of the building, the siting of the building, etc., the spectators and the players. They are very focused on the player experience. It won't be a good player experience. They're very focused on the spectator experience and say quite clearly spectators should not be sitting in prevailing weather. Well, I'm sorry, sitting at that northern end on those benches, they are facing the prevailing weather. Why are we disregarding these guidelines? Yeah, they might be guidelines, but can we not do better? Do our community not deserve better than to be given a facility that will last for 50 to 60 years? That means 2 generations. So any young Milo cricket players now, they'll grow up, their kids and their grandkids are going to have a substandard facility. Is this how we save money? Do you really want to put your name to that, councillors? We should be preserving our open space and keeping it there for the community. That area along the northern end of Moreton Park is heavily used by the community, and it's an access path through to the shopping centres, the tennis courts, the library, just to get to Moreton Park. There's a dog-off-lead oval there that's used extensively. There's lots of walkers and runners that go along there. It is used so much. To say that it's not relevant is mind-boggling to me. So just think about the community, and are you prepared, based on what you stood for when you came into local government, are you prepared to say, I don't care about open space and I don't care about the standard of the ovals?
Thank you,
Thank you.
Councillor Masood. Councillor Munro.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillors, I do believe the split level facility proposed is adequate. It addresses, and as the architects have outlined, it addresses a number of the design principles. But I don't believe it's the optimal facility for that particular site. Can I thank councillors who gave up their time to visit the site and met with club officials and had a look at what the footprint of the proposed split level would entail. I had an opportunity on the weekend yesterday to meet with club officials and to have a look at that footprint, that the split level and the encroachment into Moreton Park. And councillors, you'd be well aware of the angst in the community with the grade separation and all the tree removal along that corridor of Moreton Park and the impact that had at the time. And I think that this facility, the split level, does have a large impact on the park because of its footprint. And you will have seen the BRVG, Blackman Village Residents Group, submission on that recently. The other point I wanted to talk about is that why is this coming up now? It was part of our budget process and it was passed. There was a proposal to bring forward additional works at Walker Park and Moreton Park at the last council meeting, and the Moreton Park option was defeated. I do believe that I'm better informed since that last meeting, having met with the club. I think, councillors, I do acknowledge, and this is not standard practice to be doing this, and I don't envisage that this would be a regular occurrence. The regular process has been, I guess, deviated from because federal money is on the table and there are tight timelines to that, and some of our public consultation that would normally be employed in such a project has been skipped, and the whole timelines have been compressed, and brings us to this situation. So I think these are not normal circumstances that bring us here tonight. But having walked through with the club the way that the two-storey facility would operate, I'm quite confident that it is a better outcome. I think the functionality of the way the change rooms service the ovals in the two-storey and the more compact configuration works better, and I think the upper storey, in terms of its access to visibility to the grounds from the multi-purpose space and the two terrace spaces, is improved. But I think a key point is that the grandstand area, and it's only a modest grandstand area that exists today in the current facility, will not be behind the goals to the north of the oval, and they will not be the distraction to cricket, as has been mentioned. So, councillors, fully acknowledge that we have had debate on this, but I think that having had the opportunity, and councillors having had the opportunity to see the impact on this important parkland in central Blackburn, I think it is worthwhile consideration of the two-storey option and the additional $860,000 expenditure that would entail, and I'd encourage the motion to councillors.
Are there any speakers against the motion? Councillor Bennett.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, certainly Councillor Munro is right in saying that this particular notice of motion is not standard practice, and indeed I'm disappointed that it's been brought up tonight in this forum. Councillors, in my view, this is a case of want versus need. It seems to me that the clubs have a list of wants and have certainly articulated that over recent times. Council officers, however, over a considerably longer period of time, have tried to facilitate the needs of the clubs and all other users in the context of the budget and a host of other parameters that are listed in this report that certainly says that the cost of the split-level pavilion is $1.9 million less than the double-storey option. The split-level option also fits with Council's budget parameters and club contribution, has connection and view of both ovals, simplified access and egress for all users, cohesive separation between public and private areas, co-located food storage and handling facilities, and importantly, lower maintenance costs and less costs for repair and replacement at end of life, including no lift or staircase. So I think that's an important report from our officers to give a bit of an idea of the differences, a number of parameters between the two-storey option and the and the split-level option. Councillors, as we know, Moreton Park was not listed in our capital works program because it was determined that other pavilion developments were in greater need. I represent Morak Ward, that includes East Burwood Club, Forest Hill Club, Vermont South Club. All those clubs need redevelopment and developments on their grounds as well. I'm a councillor, though, that represents all of the City of Whitehorse, and I think, councillors, we need to bear in mind that we have a responsibility for the whole of the city. We have a process in place that's worked well, that tries to be fair and equitable with respect to all the pavilion redevelopments in this city. I don't want to see our priorities being changed so that other pavilion developments miss out or indeed delayed due to budget constraints. So officers have determined the split-level option provides the preferred outcome, taking all these factors into account. We're not experts when it comes to project design, but when it comes to deciding between a club's wants versus what council officers determine is needed with respect to pavilion developments across the whole city, I'll back the officers every time.
Thank you. Are there any speakers in favour of the motion?
Yes, Mayor.
Councillor Cutts.
Thank you, Mayor. At the last meeting on the 25th of June, the Springfield Ward councillors, which is Councillor Stennett and myself, and the Central Ward councillors, Councillor Massoud and Councillor Munro, had a joint motion that we put to council with regards to the extension and the extension, the viewing platform and the refurbishment of Walker Park and the second storey at the Moreton Park facility. I do not move from that position. I supported that then and I will support that now. I also agree, given my interest in open space, that the reduction or the addition of the 450 square metres of open space in a very important part of Blackburn, central Blackburn there, is very important to preserve if we can. Given the works done at the Blackburn railway station, there has been a lot of angst in the community, and I know down at Heatherdale, with me there, with the level crossing going through there too, there were a lot of issues with dust and things like that, but at Heatherdale the issues were not the same as what they were at Blackburn, and including the loss of an incredible number of trees at Blackburn, and I totally understand that. So this is what I'm trying to say, is that we need to preserve open space. That's one of the platforms that I stood on, and I also would like to acknowledge the $200,000 that was put forward by, I think it was the junior club, and I think that that's really, really good. Not all other clubs are able to do that, so I acknowledge that. And the other thing is that, you know, both Moreton Park and Walker Park were built in 1950. These are two of the oldest pavilions in the actual municipality, apart from two buildings in City Oval, I understand. So they are very worthy. And as I said, I will stand by my commitment that I made at the end of June at the previous ordinary council meeting. Thank you, Mayor.
Are there any speakers against the motion?
Yes, Mr.
Councillor
Mayor.
Ellis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's with a heavy heart that I speak against this, and I have to say, looking at the sea of red, it is a little bit daunting to be speaking against this proposal, and I do so accepting that this is a wonderful outcome for the club. Let's not mistake that. I think it is a wonderful outcome for the club, but I am very persuaded by the arguments that Councillor Bennett put up, because they do really mirror my own. We go through a process every year, a lengthy process to look at where our money goes, our rates from our residents that they give to us to look after wisely. We have a 10-year plan with all our projects based on merit, and they cover a whole range of wards, and that's how we should be looking at our budget. Decisions were made to bring forward two plans at the urging of the particular councillors, I should say. Moreton Park was brought forward. We debated it before the budget, and that is a first. It's been mentioned before, we don't normally do this. This is a precedent that's been set for the first time, where we revisit the budget between the draft and the final budget. This is a precedent tonight, where we revisit after the budget. And for me, I just can't accept it. I'm not negating the merits of this project, and if it comes up next year, Moreton Park, to do the two-storey option, I will happily support it. But the fact is that we have gone through the process. We have put aside many other projects in other wards that are on the 10-year list and brought two projects forward this year. Now, the ward councillors have come back and said, hey, let's make that outcome better than what we have agreed. And I just can't support it at this stage. Next year, very happy to support the two-storey option at Moreton Park. But at the moment, the budget's over, we move on to another year, and let's wait and see. The arguments about federal money, there'll always be federal money that is being offered to us. There'll always be money. That's the nature of election time. So I don't believe we've lost that at all. And by the time we do plans, yes, we'll still be in that period. So that is how I feel about it. Thank you.
Any speakers in favour of the motion?
Yes, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Carr.
Mr Mayor, I'm supporting the two-storey option for one reason only. I actually like both options, but the two-storey to me is superior for one reason, and that is the location of the viewing area. Spectators at football matches regularly sit behind the goalposts. They take their chances and that's fine, that's where they choose to sit. However, cricket spectators are a different scenario. They just present a different picture, if you like. Not necessarily due to the safety, as you can be unlucky to be hit with a cricket ball no matter where you sit. My concern is the viewing area, which is in the direct line of sight of the batsman. So it's more about the game, more so than the safety aspect. The viewing area is located directly behind the bowler when he raises his arm to bowl. To place a sight screen there would defeat the purpose of the grandstand, and I can't, to me, you're robbing Peter to pay Paul here. Let's get the design right in the first place, or the viewing area really. The design on both is really good, apart from the viewing area, and that's the only reason that I'm supporting the two-storey option. Yeah, and it is good to see all the members, and congratulations on coming tonight to support the cause, regardless of whichever way it goes. Well done. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Any speakers against the motion?
Yes, Mayor.
Councillor Liu.
Yeah, look, unfortunately, councillors, I don't think I can support this motion. While I believe that it is important to support our sporting clubs' growth in the region, I am concerned that this request from going from a split level to double-storey development has been raised again after the 18-19 budget had already been approved, with the first time of this concern being mentioned on the night of the adoption of the 18-19 budget. The timing is actually quite unfortunate, and this is what I've also raised with the ward councillors and with the club reps as well when I met with them, in that any concerns regarding this proposed redevelopment should have been raised earlier during the budget process. There were various points where this could have been raised. However, they were not made aware to the councillors until very recently. That being said, I do think that there should be more facilitation for communication between clubs, councillors and officers. Councillors from all wards had put a number of their own budget nomination items, some supported, some not supported. Councillors, for the most part, supported the final 18-19 budget adoption last month. Moreton Park was originally not included in the 10-year capital works cycle. However, councillors, including myself, were supportive of it being brought forward in the program, given the federal funding and also the considerations around the growth of the club and the usage at Moreton Park. I understand that the clubs have recently expressed, and as well as the councillors, ward councillors have expressed some concerns regarding the split level development. However, I believe that the design concerns can be addressed and mitigated or reduced with further consultation, design and planning. Moreton Park development is actually one of our more expensive pavilion developments, coming in at around 4.75 million. The two-storey option will add close to another 900,000 on top of the project costs. I'm certainly open to further considering any other feasible alternatives. As Councillor Alice mentioned, whether we look at a phased approach in terms of the budget moving forward, and or an increased funding stream, if that could be realised. I'm certainly happy to consider that. But the motion as it currently stands, I'm unfortunately unable to support it. Thank you.
Any speakers in favour of the motion? Any speakers against the motion?
I'd like to speak on the motion, Mayor.
Either for or against, Councillor Barker.
I'll speak against, Mayor.
Councillor Barker against.
Mayor, two of my election promises were to firstly to listen and the second was to support community sport and not-for-profits. Now, I'm very sympathetic to football and cricket clubs. Spend so much of my time at them, winter, summer, Milo cricket, Auskick, senior and junior footy, and I still play cricket, Mayor, as you know. And how lucky are we to have people like the Blackburn folk? Because I understand the time, the sacrifice and the commitment that you make to your great club. And Mayor, we're listening to them, they're absolutely right. These clubs are about so much more than sport. I've seen it myself. Children with disabilities learning to connect with other children and even their parents in some instances. I know that these organisations are the front line in prevention to mental health challenges that kill so many men my age. These clubs are the front line to prevention of the loneliness that afflicts so many. These clubs give people purpose and a sense of belonging. These are places that create goodness. Great societal outcomes, a kinder and more inclusive Australia with more equal opportunity for both genders. Clubs like this are a beacon for hope. But this issue's made me think about the hundreds, if not thousands, of people like them in our community. East Bocky Cricket Club, Gilly, Leanne, Bobby and Tagger. Their rooms are like an electricity substation and offer about as much charm and as amenity as a substation. Nunawading Footy Club, not enjoying a great deal of on-field success, but Bevo and Cairnsey, their rooms, something out of a Steinbeck or a Dickens novel. Surrey Park, Anthony, Stewie, Bernie and Sandy. You get the Auskick stuff, Mayor, out of a dungeon. The Coonung Comets and Nunawading Vikings, the basketball clubs. Games of kids' basketball are being shortened in this city because we don't have enough court space for them. Our netty girls, the Ponies, the Phillies, Amy, they're constantly asking me for just a practice court, a practice hoop with some lights. That's why I've been going on and on about making our cricket nets multi-purpose. Councillors, there is one unassailable economic law and that's opportunity cost. We can only spend $1 of ratepayers' money once. You spent it once, you can't spend it again. Spend 800 grand here is to spend 800 grand less on other needed projects. The park topography, yeah, I've been in Norwood, Doncaster, Zerby's Reserve, but it just doesn't work here on a flat. Will 800k here get more kids playing cricket or footy? Probably not. Will it give us more multi-purpose space? Probably not. I've found the budget savings, the $880,000, binning the Matsudo book, selling the mayoral car. We can make this happen, councillors. We can make this happen. I'm saying we keep the funding envelope as it is, but as it sits, I'm sorry I can't support this.
Thank you, councillors. As all councillors have spoken, I'll now ask Councillor Masood for the right of reply.
Thank you, Mayor. We are looking to vote and decide whether we leave a legacy for 50 to 60 years to the community. It will be terrible to leave a large club with over 1,200 families involved and more that just go along and watch, with the legacy of, for cricket, having a sight screen up and not even being able to see what happens on the upper oval. There is so much wrong with the split level design now that we start to hear more, and I've still discovered things in the last week that really disappoint me. And it's not good enough to spend so much money when we know that the split level option fails the tests of Cricket Australia's guidelines in terms of prevailing weather. The player experience, because what's the batter going to see? Well, we'll have to have the sight screens up. The stand won't be able to see what's happening on the ground, so where are they going to be? So why are we even paying to build it if they can't sit there? So the spectator experience is not going to be according to their guidelines either. The grandstand will be obscured. The loss of open space, probably valued at between $1 to $2 million, and the loss of community amenity. This is a Division 1 club. So many active families there. They raise funds. The two-storey option does not face prevailing weather. The player experience is improved because there's no one behind the goalposts. No need for sight screens. Spectators in the stand are moved more to the west, and that is actually outlined in writing in Cricket Australia's guidelines. That's where it should be, on the east-west axis. So the two-storey option does fit the guidelines. Why on earth are we doing something that doesn't fit the current guidelines? Come on, councillors, do the right thing for the community. Saving a penny now is not a saving in the next 60 years.
Councillors, I will put the motion to the vote. Those in favour? Against? The motion is tied 5-all. Casting vote or vote against. Motion is lost.
Division.
Division has been called. Those in favour? Councillor Munro, Councillor Massoud, Councillor Stennett, Councillor Cutts, Councillor Carr. Against? Councillor Ellis, Councillor Liu, Councillor Barker, Councillor Bennett, Councillor Davenport. Votes are tied, and with the casting vote, I vote against. Motion is lost. Next item on the agenda is item number 7, petitions. I'll just pause people that wish to leave the gallery to do so. Item number 7 on the agenda, petitions. There are none listed on the agenda, but I will ask councillors, do we have any petitions to be tabled tonight? There being none, I will move to item number 8, urgent business.
Yes, Mayor, I've got urgent business. It's $880,000 in savings from the budget that will enable us to proceed with the operational of the second storey. Could you put it up on the screen, please?
Councillor Barker, so the first step is to have your item admitted as urgent business. I will ask for that particular item to be shown so councillors can see that, and then I will ask if there is a seconder to have the item admitted as urgent business. All right, so...
Thank you, Mayor.
but I'm going to ask...
well, I was going to
first,
say what it's about, Mayor.
I think we'll take the item on the screen as read by the councillors.
Would it amplify it if I were to say what it's about,
I'd like
Mayor?
to ask if there's a seconder. If there is, then you'll be given a chance to move that and then indicate why it's urgent business. Is there a seconder for your admission of urgent business? Then that lapses, Councillor Barker, and you can't move your motion because it's not. You don't have a seconder to have it admitted as urgent business.
But, Mayor, couldn't we make it related to the other item that we just debated? Is clearly...
No, because the other motion was lost, and so there is no change to the budget. There's no additional expenditure.
Well, that was the purpose of that, Mayor, which was to make the
Yes,
funding envelope the
I
same,
understand.
budget neutral, so that...
Yeah, I understand, but the other motion was lost, so there's no motion to link it to.
Thank
But
you,
if
Mayor.
there's no, I'll just ask again if there is a seconder for this urgent business item. No, then it lapses. Is there any other items of urgent business this evening? Being none, I'll move now to item number 9, council reports. Councillors, we have a number of reports to consider tonight listed under City Development, Human Services and Corporate. I will introduce each report in the order listed and then call for a motion in regards to the item. Item 9. The first one is item 9.1.1, and I do recognise Councillor Stennett has indicated a conflict of interest, so can you please leave the chamber? Okay, given that councillor Stennett has left the chamber, 9.1.1, 12 Milne Street, Mitcham, I seek a mover.
Mayor, I have an alternate.
Okay, can you please have the alternate displayed on the screen? Can you briefly summarise what your alternate is, please?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. It's in two parts, Mayor. And the first part is with regards to an addition of a vegetation plan, a landscape plan, to be across the whole of the block, which incorporates mid and understory plantings, which was something which some of the objections pointed out that was very much a part of what that particular block was. Just, excuse me, Mayor, just a moment. I need that one, and I need the yellow on the other one as well.
Yep, please continue.
Sorry. So the landscape plan, yes, as I mentioned, is to look at the vegetation on the block, which was what the many objections were about. And the other part is to delete a bedroom from dwelling number 2 and dwelling number 3.
Okay, is there a seconder for the alternate?
Seconded, Mayor.
Councillor Liu, Councillor Cutts.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor, do I talk to the amendment or is an alternate?
The alternate is now the motion before us, so please talk to the
Okay, thank you.
alternate recommendation 2, which is a motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor, this relates to the dwelling at 12 number Milne Street in Mitcham, which is the construction of 3 double-storey dwellings and tree removal on an 883 square metre block. Each of the dwellings is originally meant to have 4 bedrooms, but I've suggested with this particular amendment to reduce the bedrooms at number 3 to 3 bedrooms and dwelling number 2 to 3 bedrooms, leaving the front dwelling with 4 bedrooms. This particular lot is just down the road here, about 400 metres away, just on the other side of Walker Park and Dunlaven Road. And in fact, the back of this property butts onto dwelling in Dunlaven Road. I chaired a consultation forum on the 17th of April, and there were some concessions which were made by the developer, but no resolution overall was reached. And the reason why it's come up to council is that there were 14 objections. The main parts of their objections were that this is an overdevelopment, and in that case, that's why I've addressed this by reducing the number of bedrooms, because it is basically the bulk which the objections were mainly pointing out. The other objections were largely, as I mentioned before, around the vegetation. There were many aspects of the particular application which I did like, and the developer did go to certain lengths to change some of his ideas with regards to putting some screening on some of the windows and things like that. But basically, because this is a general residential zone, this can accommodate more intensive development than our neighbourhood residential zones. It still does, though, present to me as a better option to go with this particular proposal here. The report has a number of conditions which have been highlighted in our paperwork here, and with all of this, it is hoped that this will be quite a good solution for this particular area. This street is a cul-de-sac and there's no turning circle down the bottom, so it's one of these ones where your garbage truck has to back down and all the bins are put on one side of the street, so there are congestion and parking issues down the street, which I think is important to note. And also it's quite difficult on days when Whitehorse Council, we have our major Whitehorse festivals and things like that. They do have parking issues there, but that's obviously not as not as common as the Walker Park having all their activities there every Saturday and Sunday. So, councillors, I do suggest that you please consider this. The particular landscape plan is really to look at some of those things with regards to the birds, which many birds. Some of the objections I've had here indicate numbers of birds actually love that area there, and it would be really good to see that we have this vegetation plan being supported. So councillors, I would ask you to support this particular alternate recommendation. Thank you.
Councillor Liu.
Thank you, Mayor. Look, I'm happy to support this alternate that Councillor Cutts has put up. I do note that this proposal and subsequent report falls in line with the state and local planning policies, with the zoning being in general residential zone Schedule 1. I think with these particular amendments or additions to the substantive report, that it would provide certainly more canopy and greenery to the proposed development, providing some screening relief for the surrounding residents and future inhabitants. And this was certainly one of the issues that was raised by some of the objectors. And I think with the deletion of the 2 rooms from the 2 units, it will soften the look of the development and create a bit more setback as well. So I think this is a reasonable compromise, and I'm happy to support this motion. Thank you.
Any speakers against the motion?
Mr Mayor, can I move an amendment to delete, and I don't know what provision is, the provision where it deletes the 2 bedrooms?
So there is a alternate to delete, an amendment to delete conditions number 1A and 1B. Is that the amendment? That's the deletion of the bedroom. Yep.
It is about the deletion of the bedrooms. Yep. Is that 2 parts?
Yep. So I seek a seconder for your amendment.
Happy to second, Mayor.
Councillor Barker. Councillor Munro for the amendment.
Thank you, Mayor. I do support the officer's report, and I certainly fully endorse the amendment that Councillor Cutts is proposing in terms of the mid-storey vegetation. I think that's a good outcome. Councillors, I am a bit concerned about the concept of hacking away at developments that have been designed by an architect and put forward by a proponent, selecting which particular bedrooms, and I think there were discussions with planners in terms of that. But whether reducing the overall number of bedrooms from 12 to 10 addresses the issue, perceived issue of bulk, I'm not so convinced. So I think there needs to be fairly good justification for us to modify the plans in this way. I do note that as was mentioned, the property is in close proximity to here, but it's also in close proximity to Whitehorse Road, and it has good access to public transport. And I think this sort of development, it's a reasonable size block, and changing 2 bedrooms in the scheme of things is not necessarily going to make a material change to the residents that may have some concerns. It does expose us potentially to VCAT. The developer may accept the modification that is proposed and allow it to go through, but I'm not sure that it's good planning practice. So I'd encourage councillors to support the amendment to remove those 2 provisions.
Mr Mayor, can I seek some clarification, please?
You're asking a question?
Yes, it's a question.
Okay, a question.
The removal of those 2, will that effectively give us back the report as printed, the substantive motion?
No, it does not. There are other changes that have made, and they are highlighted. And to answer your question, those additions are, I'll have to turn to it. It's conditions number 1G and number 3. Sorry, it's 1I is it. So there are some other changes from the report that's in there as well. Councillor Barker.
Oh, thanks very much, Mayor. It's an interesting site, this one, and I thank Councillor Munro for bringing forward. The plans as they sit meet the residential code, and I'd hate to think that we're risking $15,000 of our ratepayers' money with the potential trip to VCAT. And I fully appreciate the issues that you raise, the Councillor Cutts raises in terms of bulk, which is the reason why I'm supporting of the other recommendation, particularly around the vegetation. This is a building that, in terms of the westerly sun, which is the one that makes a big difference to houses in Australia or in Melbourne in the summer, there's not bad vegetation, but the alternate, which is to add to that vegetation, are far better. And you note on the neighbouring properties there's a double-storey steel shed, which would make for a pretty interesting outlook if you're living in the second unit. Now, the next door neighbour's been there before and they built the double-storey steel shed. Bless them. I'm sure that steel shed might get replaced at some stage, Mr Mayor, because I'm sure they get a lot of use out of a double-storey steel shed. But this alternate gets the vegetation right. And again, I understand that why a unit's got so many bedrooms. Well, they're not the bedrooms that maybe we're accustomed to in our houses. Different people have different family structures, and the bedrooms often aren't, dare I say it, used as bedrooms where there's a double bed, because as I've seen in some of the applications in our area, some of these single bedrooms, you're not going to fit a double-storey bed in them. So, I mean, calling them a bedroom is probably a fairly generous description of them. Whether they're really a study, I think often they're called a bedroom for the marketing purposes, and I wouldn't want to cast those aspersions over this applicant. So I certainly recommend this alternate to you, councillors, and endorse Mr Munro's concepts that, let's not hack away at the building. Let's travel a safe path. Thank you, Mayor.
Are there any speakers against the amendment? Councillor Bennett.
Yes, Mayor, thank you. Certainly the point I'd like to make is one of building bulk and separation of the upper levels. I think we have a duty here to ensure that these building envelopes are of such that they don't impact on the neighbourhood character. I think anything to do with increasing setbacks and reducing the building envelope as far as the second storey is concerned, I think is a positive move. So I think that these two items should be included in the original alternate recommendation. Thank you.
Any speakers in favour of the amendment? Any speakers against the amendment? Any further speakers? I'm going to put the motion to the vote. I'll put the amendment to the vote. This is to delete 1A and 1B from the motion. All those in favour? Against? The amendment's lost. Division. All those in favour? Councillor Munro, Councillor Davenport, Councillor Barker. Against? Councillor Ellis, Councillor Liu, Councillor Bennett, Councillor Carr, Councillor Cutts, Councillor Masood. The amendment is lost. Go back to the motion. Are there any speakers against the motion? Any speakers in favour of the motion? Councillor Bennett.
Thank you, Mayor. Look, I want to make the point about our urban forest strategy, and I note with the motion that there's been increased landscaping, and you'll note that there's been some emails going backwards and forwards today from the original question I asked about canopy cover for developments. And I think it's very important that now that we have an urban forest strategy that is looking at a 30% canopy cover by 2030, that's important that we act now to ensure that we move towards that. Now, we haven't got a definitive answer about whether that 30% canopy cover will be achieved with this particular development, but my information late today was that it's certainly moving towards that way. So I think that's a positive benefit. And I heard the other day when the question was asked, when is the best time to plant a tree? And the answer is 20 years ago. So the second best time to plant a tree is now. I think that's very important, considering that our 2030 timeline is just over 10 years away. We should be planting more trees now for 20 years' time when they're mature. So I support the increased landscaping aspect of the motion, as well as the reduced impact on the as far as the building envelope's concerned. Overall, I support this motion.
Any speakers against the motion? Any further speakers in favour of the motion? Councillor Masood.
I just want to take the opportunity, Councillor Bennett mentioned about the optimum time to plant a tree, and in fact the end of July is National Tree Day.
Point of order, Mayor.
And therefore...
Point of order has been called. Councillor Barker, can you please
And I'm talking about tree planting.
Hang on, Councillor Masood. Point of order has been called. Councillor Barker, can you please state the nature of the point of order and your explanation and your brief explanation on why I think it should be held?
Well, it's relevance, Mayor. I'm not sure how National Tree Day relates to this application.
Councillor Masood, please provide a brief explanation as part of your speech. Thank you.
My explanation is that I just supported what Councillor Bennett said about the optimum time to plant a tree, which is now, and that I actually also support the vegetation and getting the understory and the upper story and seeing an increase in our canopy. And I certainly think that is a positive part of this motion and should be clearly stated and supported. Thank you.
Any speakers against the motion? Any speakers in favour of the motion? There's no further speakers and there's been no speakers against the motion. I'm going to put the motion. Those in favour? Against? Motion's carried. Division has been called. All those in favour? Councillor Masood, Councillor Cutts, Councillor Carr, Councillor Bennett, Councillor Liu, Councillor Ellis. Against? Councillor Munro, Councillor Davenport, Councillor Barker. The motion is carried. Can an officer please let Councillor Stennett back, please? Just like to remind councillors that meetings are recorded for openness and transparency purposes. Item 9.1.2, Whitehorse Planning Scheme Review 2018. I seek a mover.
Happy to move, Mayor.
Councillor Stennett moved. I seek a seconder.
Happy to second, Mayor.
Councillor Masood seconded. Councillor Stennett.
So thank you, Mayor. So this report is about the review of our planning scheme. The state government require us to review our planning scheme within a certain amount of time of developing our council plan, and the state government also require us to develop our council plan within a certain time of the election. So we've had the election, we've had our council plan, and now we're reviewing our planning scheme. Now initially we go back to 1999. In that period of time after council amalgamations, councils were developing new planning schemes. Between 1997 and 1999, we've had 3 reviews since that time, in 2002, 2010 and the most recent in 2014. The review and the report, attached report to your agenda, quite a comprehensive report, dealt with in the discussion the current policy, being the effectiveness of the current policy changes, particularly relating to local and state policy changes. And that's quite a challenge, given particularly in the state context, there are some things that were recently introduced, but there are also some things being introduced in the next few months. So when we're not really sure what the context might look like in the next few months, it's a bit hard to do an accurate review. There were some key issues and recommendations arising from that review period, and so we're here tonight to note that review. So the recommendation endorsed the findings of the Planning Scheme Review Report in Attachment 1 and forward the endorsed Planning Scheme Review Report to the Minister for Planning. Give approval to seek authorisation for a future planning scheme amendment and give effect to minor changes and updates recommended by the review, and refer any additional work to the Strategic Planning Work Programme and future budget process as needed. So I commend the report.
Councillor Masood.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, look, the report is certainly worth reading. Quite a lot happens in planning, and of course, as Councillor Stennett referred to, that the Deputy Secretary of DELP actually wrote to all councils and talked about the smart planning program and proposed changes, which we won't know about until mid-2018. So I think the officer's decision to do the review now and then to look at the changes coming in, I think is probably a manageable approach. I think they've done a good job with the review. The policy changes that have happened since our last review are listed on page 22. I'm not going to go through the detail. The key issues emerging from the review were neighbourhood character and land use, the continuing pressure for non-industrial uses in industrial zones, the potential issue regarding car parking rates for industrial areas where there is now increased flexibility for non-industrial uses. It was also interesting to see that the Box Hill Central Activities Area structure plan, it was thought should be or could be strengthened, or even have a review to provide additional guidance around the built form, and also the Nunawading Mega Mile Major Activity Centre and Mitcham Neighbourhood Activity Centre were acknowledged, and they have actually got funding to update the structure plan proposed in the 2018-19 budget. Key recommendations, and again there's a few, are on page 24 of the agenda, and I encourage residents to have a look because it is quite involved. Thank you.
Any speakers against the motion? Any speakers in favour of the motion? There being no speakers either for and against, I'm going to put the motion to the vote. Those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. 9.1.3, Cycling Strategy, Whitehorse Cycling Strategy, Annual Implementation Report for 2017-18. I seek a mover.
So moved, Mayor.
Councillor Barker moved. I seek a seconder.
Second.
Councillor Bennett seconded. Councillor Barker.
Well, thanks very much indeed, Mayor. Nothing fires up people more than a couple of topics at council. Cycling, pavilions and dogs and are right up there. But cycling is really important for our great city and cycling excites a lot of people because they use cycling not only for their recreation, but they use it to get around. And you see, there's a gentleman in our area that gets around actually with an aluminium ladder on a bike and a rake, and he's a home maintenance man and gets around on this bike. And I see a couple of knowing nods there that yes, some people use a bicycle as their mode of work transport. And we've got some really energetic groups in Whitehorse, Mayor. I know Councillor Leo and I have met with a number of them on a number of occasions. And this is an update about what's been going on in the world of cycling. And I don't want to indulge myself too long, Mayor, but I was a survivor of the crime crisis that's been gripping our end of the city and had my bike and my son's bike stolen. Now, of course, it's only when you lose your bike that you actually understand how much you use it to go and get the paper or to go down to local footy and things like that. But this is a great report It talks about the things that officers have been doing. The Bike It program, again, that my children attended this year, and I turned up and had a look at it, and it was very popular. And my kids are pretty harsh judges of things. If they don't think something's good, they tend to let you know, Mayor. But they really enjoyed the Bike It program and got a lot out of it. Also, like people to note that the pipe track works. That's been delayed, and it's not because of anything we're doing, but Melbourne Water need to do some work on the pipes below it, so it would be premature to lay some track over the top of it, only for Melbourne Water to dig it up. Hanover Street and Vermont South and Dorking Road in the Great Elgar Ward with Councillor Leo and I with the Sharians and some of the fairly short bike lanes, but it certainly alerts people that these are things that are going on. And in the budget, of course, we've got the transport study coming up, which will consider cycling, and we've got some bike parking in Box Hill Central, which again, really important for people, so we get bikes off footpaths, away from shopping trolleys, and into a car park where people can store bikes securely. So there's a lot of great things going on here. And the report also mentions some of the factors that are outside of our control, Mayor, and in particular the North East Link and the potential widening of the Eastern Freeway, what that means for our Coonung Creek Trail, which I know pretty much anyone that lives in our great city has ridden their bike along or jogged along or walked their dog along. So the officers are doing a lot of communication with the authority there. And again, there's some work that myself and Councillor Carr's committee's been doing in terms of dogs and bikes and tracks and off-lead areas. So I commend the report for councillors. It's an excellent one. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Bennett.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, well, look, I'm happy to support the progress of the Whitehorse cycling strategy over the past 12 months. So we all know the benefits of cycling and that increased participation, though, requires significant planning. It's throughout the report, it's mentioned a number of times that to make bike riding easier and safer is of paramount importance, and certainly officers have worked tirelessly to ensure that there's a number of cycling strategies, education and behavioural programs to ensure that cycling does remain a safe and enjoyable experience. I did actually take the time to check out our website to find out about the easy ride routes that have been drafted. There's 6 easy ride routes that have been drafted, and you can find them on the website. It's an example of one of the initiatives to make cycling safer and allows more participation. So one of the routes that is through Morak Ward starts at the Lookout Trail behind the transfer station in Vermont South and links up with the Box Hill to Ringwood Path. It's also, there will be a linkage with the proposed east-west shared use path along the former Healesville Freeway reservation when that eventually gets done. So I'd like to also just note that there was a big win that was announced in this year's state budget after much lobbying to get funding allocated for the construction of a shared use path adjacent to Burwood Highway from Morak Road across Dandenong Creek to the Eastlink Bridge. That will certainly add to the continuity and participation of bike riders within our municipality and with the adjacent Knox community. As Councillor Barker's mentioned, it was disappointing that the shared user path along the Melbourne Water pipe track has been put on hold while Melbourne Water determined maintenance and renewal issues. But that will happen in the time to come. As was mentioned, there are certainly challenges that need to be managed, including interaction with pedestrians, motor vehicles, dogs off leash, etc. And we need to keep working on that to ensure that there's mutual respect, I think, that's key to this particular area. So, Councillor, cycling is enjoyed by many people all around the world. By continuing to adopt best practices, the future certainly looks good for our Whitehorse cycling strategy, and I commend this progress report. Thank you.
Any speakers against the motion? Any speakers in favour of the motion? Being no further speakers, I'm going to put the motion straight to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Item 9.2.1, Community Grants 2018-2019, and I will ask Councillor Liu and Councillor Ellis to please leave the chamber. I seek a mover.
Happy to move, Mayor.
Councillor Masood moved. I seek a seconder.
Seconding, Mayor.
Councillor Barker seconded. Councillor Masood.
Well, it's my great pleasure to move this motion. This motion is about supporting our wonderful community groups in a simple manner to just deliver great opportunities and support to those groups. We support the not-for-profit community groups and organisations to provide a wide range of services, programs and initiatives that benefit them and the community. And through this community grants program, we received 198 applications from 198 community groups, both for cash and for discount support, totalling over $1.1 million. The Community Grants Program is divided into 5 separate components, which are listed on page 30. I won't go through all of them. The annual cash grants, which consists of minor grants up to $5,000 and then major grants between $5,000 and $20,000, were considered by a councillor panel on Thursday the 21st of June this year. The recommendations were for a total amount of $146,000, which is a bit over $18,000 under the budget allocation. However, we often will get other applications during the year, and so to have a little bit of money there to help when it is really needed, I think is important to have as a backstop. The panel chose not to allocate that extra funds and make it available for grant requests that we do get during the year. The discount support hall hire is perhaps doesn't sound like much. It actually, its value comes to about $295,000, and there's 3 levels: 90% discount for seniors groups, 75% for service clubs and 50% for all others. But it does also include the option of 1 free hall hire fundraising event annually for each organisation, which is a great opportunity for them to raise funds and support their administrative costs and programs. The discount support free tipping vouchers that we provide to organisations have a nominal amount of $130. Of course, our tipping is really based on weight, so a nominal amount is set and they get a free voucher for a free tipping pass, and based on that nominal amount, that estimated cost is about $32,500, but it again supports organisations where they've got to get rid of some waste that has to go to landfill. So that's good. With the respect to the partnership grants that we have, Council previously resolved to extend those partnership grants with community organisations while we do a review of the community grants, and so they have been budgeted for 2018-2019 financial year, and that will give Council time to consider changes to the community grants program. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Barker.
Thanks, Mayor, and this year was my first time sitting on the Community Grants panel, and I've got to say it was really enjoyable, it was really interesting. For those that might be at home enjoying every word of tonight, there's a huge amount of applications that go into this, and not all of them are successful. To give you an idea of the sheer amount of paper that goes in, there was a trolley with, I don't know, almost a dozen A4 binders of grant applications, and I commend the officers for doing the really hard work to go through and grind it out, because whilst the grant amounts might look small, if it's $400 for some life jackets for the scouts here or some tents for the scouts there, the probity and how this money's spent, is maintained even on these very small amounts. And those small amounts can be really important to these not-for-profit groups. And I'd like to also talk about, just really briefly, the spread of things that are being done, and whether it's people that knit for the needy. Now, we're buying them some wool so they can keep knitting jumpers for those less fortunate than ourselves. To, I think it was it some trumpets for the band or the orchestra. So, now, these are modest things to help people that may not have necessarily the financial means to be involved in civic life. There's another one, which was, I think it was the Crossways, the life coaching one that I know Mr. Councillor Munro and I have been out to see, where volunteers are taking through their own coaching program to build up their capacity, and they help people with life skills that get back on their feet if they've been possibly imprisoned or they're having issues with dysfunction. And so these aren't people these aren't for-profit organisations. These are, again, the outstanding individuals that give so much of themselves to the community, and it's basically just helping them. Might be buying some tea and coffee and, you know, some photocopying and some of the little things to help these programs happen. And without this support, it would. I don't like governments wasting ratepayers' money, as you know, Mayor, but there are some little programs here that have an exponential impact on other people's lives. And we should be really proud of that. And you look at, you know, the Uniting Eastern Emergency Relief, again, volunteers doing really good things, making our city the great place it is. And once again, I commend it to councillors, and I thank the officers for the mountain of work that they put in to get us to the point where we could meet as a panel and go through it. Thank you, Mayor.
Any speakers against the motion? Any speakers in favour of the motion? There being no further speakers, either for or against, I'm going to put the motion. Those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Can I ask, please ask that Councillor Liu and Councillor Ellis be invited back to the chamber. Move on to the next item on the agenda, 9.3.1, delegations from Council to Chief Executive Officer and positions within the organisation. I seek a mover.
Happy to move.
Councillor Ellis moved. I seek a seconder.
Happy to second, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Carr seconded. Councillor Ellis.
Oh, thank you, Mr Mayor. This is a fairly procedural motion. Basically, under the Act, Section 98.1 of the Act provides that Council may, by delegation, delegate to a member of the staff any power, duty or function of the Council under the Act. And this is actually linked to a decision that we made at the meeting on the 25th of June 2018 when we adopted the procurement policy. And the policy provides that the CEO may approve purchase orders and awards contract up to the amount of $750,000. That is an increase on the former or the previous instrument of delegation to the CEO, which authorises a maximum of $500,000. GST inclusive, I might add. The instrument of delegation does require that it must be updated in line with the new increased amount, and that's what I'm requesting that my fellow councillors approve tonight. Thank you.
Councillor Carr.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillor Ellis has covered it very well, so nothing further to add. I'm happy to second.
Any speakers against the motion? Any speakers in favour of the motion? I'll put the motion to the vote. Those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. 9.3.2, Delegated Decisions May 2018. I seek a mover.
Happy to move. Oh,
Councillor Carr moved. Seek a seconder.
happy to second. Thank you.
Councillor Ellis seconded. Councillor Carr.
Just procedural, Mr Mayor, nothing to add. Thank you.
Councillor Ellis.
I have nothing further to add.
Seek a speaker. Is there a speaker wishing to speak against the motion? Speaker for the motion? I'll put the motion to the vote. Those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Item number 10, reports from delegates, special committee recommendations and assembly of council records. 10.1, reports by delegates. Remind councillors that only councillors that have been appointed by council and a delegate to such committees report in this particular section. I'm going to start with Councillor Ellis.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. As I mention almost every month, the Eastern Affordable Housing Alliance is in campaign mode. We're heading into the state election this year and obviously the federal election next year, and we are already working out our advocacy statement. In fact, we have finalised it, and I understand there'll be a press release in this week's paper involving our role and our advocacy plans and what we are looking for the Eastern region. So I'll keep you posted at future meetings. Thank you.
Councillor Liu.
Thank you, Mayor. Just one item to report. We had a Whitehorse Business Group strategy meeting on the evening of the 10th of July, and this was really to look through, I guess, strategies, marketing strategies to attract as well as retain the membership within the Whitehorse Business Group, and also look at how we could better, I guess, market and attract nominees for the business awards. So there were quite a number of questions raised in terms of what our target market is and what we want our target market to be, as well as ideas around a further enhanced marketing strategy. So all in all, it was a very productive session, and I'm sure that Councillor Cutts will elaborate on that as well. Thank you.
Councillor Barker. Do you have any reports as?
No, Mayor.
Councillor Bennett.
Nothing to report, Mayor.
Councillor Carr.
Nothing to report, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Cutts.
Yes, Mayor. Just one meeting which I attended with Councillor Liu, the strategic planning meeting for the Whitehorse Business Group. The target market was determined to be the small to medium enterprises and micro businesses in Whitehorse, and it was a very well run meeting. The Treasurer ran this meeting, and we will bring notes, and I think we'll distribute those when they are ready to hand out, but they're very worthwhile. And the other thing was talking about the Whitehorse Excellence in Business Awards. So this is open now, and I do have numbers of copies here for each councillor and executive as well. To you, please, if you think about any business
Councillor
in
Cutts,
Whitehorse...
I'll have to put a pause on that because it's not actually a report for a delegate.
All right, well, I've got those there. But that's all I have to report. Thank you, Mayor.
Councillor Stennett.
Nothing to advertise. Nothing to report.
Thank you, Councillor Stennett. Councillor Masood.
Nothing to report, Mayor.
Councillor Munro.
No report, Mayor.
Councillors, on my list from the last meeting, we had the community grants panel, which was subject of a motion this evening. On the 29th of June, Councillor Bennett and I attended the Eastern Region group of council meetings where a number of topics were discussed, and councillors, I will circulate the minutes of meeting when they become available, as I normally do. They are the two reports that I have. Councillors, I seek a motion to receive and note the delegate reports.
So moved, Mayor. Seconded.
Right. Councillor Liu moved. I seek a seconder.
Happy to second.
Councillor
Mayor.
Cutts seconded. Are there any speakers either in for or against? No, I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Against? Motion's carried. Item 10.2, Recommendation from Special Committee of Council meeting 9th of July 2018. There were no recommendations. I'll move on to item 10.3, record of Assembly of Councillors. I seek a mover.
Happy to move.
Councillor Ellis moved. A seconder.
Second.
Councillor Bennett seconded. Any speakers for or against? No, I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Now move to item number 11, report on conferences and seminars. Councillors, are there any reports on conferences and seminars? I will start with Councillor Munro.
No report, Mayor.
Councillor Masood.
Yes, I attended a seminar called Change Our Game, and Councillor Cutts also attended, which was run at KPMG, about the future of women on sports boards. It was a forum for local government and the community. It had a panel of speakers, which was certainly excellent. And I think talking about the challenges, but also the need for states-funded sporting associations have to achieve a 40% of women on their sports boards as a quota by the 1st of July 2019. And so there was predominantly more of a discussion about women on sports boards and their contribution, the effect that's perceived in terms of the dynamics of the board, and the benefits, and certainly encouraging people, if they were interested in pursuing that pathway. There was also some discussion about accessing funds from the Female Friendly Facilities Fund, and it was very well attended. It was actually organised by the VLGA, and a rough estimate, I think there was at least 200 there on the day. Thank you.
Councillor Stennett.
Thanks, Mayor. Nothing to report.
Councillor Cutts.
Yes, Mayor, I attended the same event as Councillor Masood and she covered it off very well, so nothing further to add.
Councillor Carr.
Nothing to report, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Bennett.
Nothing to report.
Councillor Barker.
Nothing to report, Mayor.
Councillor Liu.
Just one item to report, Mayor. Myself, as well as Councillor Cutts and Councillor Carr, attended the MAV run session on the 29th of June, and it was looking at a tour of VCAT. So that was quite interesting. So this session, free session, was open to all mayors and councillors. So we attended that, and it was quite well attended. And so there were basically a board from VCAT, reps that were there to answer some questions. I was hoping that the Q&A session would run for longer. However, they only took a couple of questions. But Councillor Carr and I were able to squeeze in our our queries in there, and then we also took a tour around the actual building, and we actually popped into the Dispute Settlement Centre in Victoria as well, and one of the reps from there spoke about their services and what they offer. And yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Councillor Ellis.
Nothing to report.
Councillors, I have one report. I attended the Stronger Cities Network Global Summit last week. This was attended by mayors and what you'd call governors from all over the world, so it was good to have an international conference locally where you can travel to that. The main topic that was talked about was combating violent extremism, which is known more widely known as terrorism or other types of violent acts. And councillors, what I will do is circulate a written report. Given the nature of the topics that were discussed, I think a written report is better. But it was quite an eye-opener in terms of what other municipalities in other countries do face with regards to this topic. But on the positive side, the actions that are undertaken to combat these types of acts, both on combating after the fact but prevention before these types of acts can occur, are certainly things that we can learn from. So councillors, I now seek a motion to receive and note these reports.
Happy to move.
Councillor Ellis moved, a
Happy
seconder.
to second.
Councillor Cutt seconded. Are there any speakers for or against? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Move to item 12, confidential reports. There are none this evening. So I'll now move to item 13 and close the meeting. I'll now close the meeting and thank you all for attending and have a great evening. Thank you.